Hey friends, welcome to Learning to Listen to Our Plants, Treating Problems. Welcome, I'm Jocelyn Molyneux of Jocelyn Soil Booster and Waste Not Farms. I'm so excited to have you guys here today. We're just getting set up now with the webinar. We're welcoming folks on. I can see everyone arriving and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Welcome Anuraj, Christina. Who else am I seeing out there? Rhonda and thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to do a quick AV test. So can someone or if everyone could just drop a comment in the chat. Can you hear me all right? Can you see me all right? Are we aligned horizontally? This is, I think, our third webinar now, and each time there seems to be different AV troubles. So if you can give me a thumbs up in the chat or, oh, great. So I'm getting the comments. Everything is looking good. Wonderful. Thank you, folks. I'm seeing my producer. She's not looking as confident. Everything okay, Nat? It's locked on another person. Okay, so my producer, Natalie, is telling me that the video is locked on someone else. Can you guys, Anuraj perhaps, or Brenda, Eva, I would imagine you would be letting me know if you couldn't see my video. So if anybody could just confirm that you're seeing me. Yes, thank you, Anuraj. Appreciate you jumping in there and letting me know. So we'll just have to go with this, and we'll make a note, Nat. We got to work on that next time, figure out what's going on. So really pumped to have you guys here today. This is going to be a really exciting webinar. It's definitely the most intensive one that we have presented so far. And I have to admit that I'm also excited because the reality is some of my plants do have pests. That's right. I'm willing to admit it. There's no shame. The reality is when you are a houseplant lover and you're using natural techniques, you're not using chemicals, it's going to happen sooner or later, whether it's from buying a new plant at the store or even just in the air, or if your plants were outside at any point. These pests, they happen. It is totally natural, and we're going to deal with it today. And it's about treating the problem when you see it. So today we're going to be looking at two particular pests. And at the end of the session, there'll be a Q&A opportunity. In fact, at any point during the webinar, feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and then I will take them time at the end to answer as best I can. And in particular today, we're going to be talking about two very common houseplant pests, and those are mealy bugs and spider mites. These are two, and like I said, I've got real life examples here with me. I'm going to show you what you're looking for, how to see when this becomes a problem, and then of course how to treat them so that it doesn't infect all of your houseplants, because that can be a reality. If you ignore the problem, you know, I always say it's kind of like tooth pain or car troubles. You know, the problem does not get better by itself. You have to look after these plants when you see something going wrong. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If there are other concerns that you have, I'd be happy to try and address them in the live Q&A at the end. And as well, I have to admit, when I was doing my research, preparing for today's webinar, I realized that there's probably a lot of information here. In fact, probably too much information for just one webinar. So I think this treating problems, this learning to listen to your plants is going to be a multi-part series. So I would love to know what are some of the other pests or other concerns that you have, because that might be the foundation for a future webinar episode. So welcome to Grow Like a Pro with Joe and our Treating Pests and Problems series. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through how to identify when your plants are having these issues. We're going to treat these issues in real time and then do the Q&A. And at the very end of the webinar, I am going to share a discount code, a limited time discount code so that you can have 25% off all the products at soilbooster.ca. So that's a reason to stick around, if not for any other reason. So let's get started. The first pest that we're going to be talking about today is mealy bugs. And I can tell you, even though I love animals and I love nature, mealy bugs, they kind of creep me out. So I'm really going out of my zone here, out of my comfort zone to do this with you guys, because I really, I want to lead by example. But the reality is these guys are kind of gross. So the first thing I want to do is really help you guys. So mealy bugs are like a tiny mite, but they're actually quite visible with the naked eye. And the first thing that you often see, or the first symptom, let's say, when your plant is infected with mealy bugs, is like a white cotton, a white fluff almost that will start to accumulate. And sometimes it's really easy at first to think that maybe it's just some dust that's landed. So, it's always really important to be paying close attention to your plants. And week in, week out, when you're doing your watering, take an extra few minutes to really observe. Of course, you're looking for new growth, but really you also want to be checking, is there anything that looks a little bit weird, a little bit different? And in this case, the mealy bugs, they really come on strong. They really, once you know what you're looking for, they're kind of hard to miss. So these planters in particular have been infected with the mealy bugs. And I actually have an example here that I want to show you guys. I'm going to come up there right to the camera to try and give you a bit of an example. And I really want to see if you guys can see the white fluff that is on that. So if you see I'm sort of trying to show you, this one is really badly infected. So you'd want to try and capture this before. And no, I did not plan my nail color to match this plant. I know you're wondering. And so this white fluff are actually the mealy bugs themselves. And so as soon as you start to see your plant accumulating that kind of white fluff, that is a sign that you have these mealy bugs, and you want to start treating them immediately. Because like most pests, if you don't treat them and address the problem, and unfortunately oftentimes you do have to do the treatment a couple of times, they can spread quite quickly to all your other plants. Now, what's interesting is different pests do prefer different plants. And in fact, within this whole window box here, it's this particular plant that has gotten infected. And some of the ferns, the flowers, are not showing signs of that pest. So again, it really shows that there is a preference with this mealy bug to go after certain plants. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to prune. And often you will find this is the case with a lot of your pest problems, that if and when you can prune the plants, it is going to save you a lot of headache. And I should mention that for those of you who tune in regularly, I know there's a few of you, the set is totally different today. And we did this specifically because we didn't want to risk taking these infected plants and potentially infecting all the other houseplants that we have here at the farm. So we've really curated and tried to focus the set design today, because we're just as cautious as anybody that takes the time and effort to grow healthy plants, that you don't want to make the mistake of transferring that kind of a pest. That is another reason why I'm taking a moment here to clean my tools, to clean my clippers. And I'm going to be doing that a couple of times today. And that's really because I can't risk spreading that pest concern. So like I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to do is anywhere that I can I'm going to actually just remove the stalk entirely. And fortunately, these are fast-growing plants. And so when you are trimming, you want to trim right below the node. And the node is right where the two little fresh stalks are coming off. And that is going to ensure that the plant grows back healthily. And I'm seeing some more here. So I'm going to trim that off. And I know that this one over here is also quite infected. And in fact, I actually prepped this one so that I could take it out of its planter. And it is always a little bit sad when you realize that a plant has received a pest. I know for me personally, I've taken it as a personal failing that perhaps I didn't do a good job looking after the plant. But the reality is, this is Mother Nature. That's really what happens, and it is a sign that you are using natural techniques. Certainly, if you were using chemicals, it wouldn't necessarily be as much of an issue. So with mealy bugs in particular, they tend to hide in the crevices of the leaf or the stem. And like I said, the nice thing about the mealy bug is that you are able to see it. So unlike some of the other pests, they are quite visible. Now, I know it's a little bit difficult, and hopefully you guys caught it earlier on when I was showing. And then the other piece that's confusing here is that, oh, there's a section I want to get rid of. Oh, nope, there's a whole section. So it is the type of thing where you don't want to be rushing and missing, because with the mealy bug in particular, you have to get every single bug. You have to get every single species. So at this point, I have trimmed a lot of the plant, and because I don't want to trim any further, and this is not a super valuable house plant, it is one that grows back quite quickly. So I'm being a little bit more aggressive than if it was, for example, a prize monstera or something that takes a lot longer. So the next step, after I feel like I've done all the pruning that is possible, is to take out my handy dandy tweezers. And at this point, what we're going to do, actually, I'm going to put some of this rubbing alcohol, which is what I also use to disinfect the clippers. I'm just going to put that in a little container there, a little ramekin. And I am now going to hand pick or use the tweezers to pull off any of the remaining mealy bugs that I can find. And again, because I did quite an aggressive job with this, oh, nope, here's some. So this, in this case, this is the fluff that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to, ooh, they're a little bit gooey when you do this. I'm going to, you know what, I'm gonna have to use my paper towel to make this work. And I'm really just going in there, and every little one is coming off. And actually, when I was doing some additional research for this episode, one thing I learned was that there are actually different types of mealy bugs, and some of them feed on the actual growth, and some of them are feeding on the root system. So what type of mealy bug you have can really depend, and that's going to indicate where you want to be looking for these little pests and pulling them off. All right, so I'll do one final look over here. This is looking pretty good. And so the next step is I'm going to rinse these. I'm going to rinse it underwater. And that is also because I'm going to fill up my watering can over here. And then once I've got my watering can all filled up, I'm going to be able to rinse off this plant, and any of those remaining mealy bugs are going to be removed. All right. Another option with mealy bugs is you can be using a Q-tip or some other kind of cotton swab, dabbing it in the rubbing alcohol and using that on top of any of the remaining mealy bugs. So you can, pick your poison here. It's up to you which technique you'd like to use. And again, unfortunately, often with pests, especially if you haven't caught them in an early stage, you may have to do it a number of times. And what I would recommend if that were the case were to use a couple of different techniques so that if there are any in particular that you haven't got the first time, a different technique the second time. Like in this case with the Q-tip and the rubbing alcohol, I'm able to coat the stem with the alcohol. But after I've done that, it is critical to, like I said, to rinse off the plant. And there are certain plants that won't respond well to the rubbing alcohol. So you do need to be cautious of that and double check the sensitivity of any particular plant. If it is more sensitive, if it can't handle the drying effect of rubbing alcohol, you're probably going to want to go back to the tweezer methodology. Next, we're not done yet with the mealy bugs. Now we need to do a spray with some kind of natural insecticidal or anti-pest soap or solution. So there's a few options for this piece. My personal favorite is neem. Neem is a type of plant that has a natural pest deterrent, and it's very commonly used in organic houseplant care. And this is, for example, a certified organic product. You could also use a insecticidal spray. Personally, I prefer the neem. However, it is the type of thing that it has quite a strong smell. So the other thing about neem that's interesting is that it's almost a solid at room temperature. So what I'm going to do right now is fill up my little spray bottle here with some lukewarm water. So I'm over here. Sorry, I don't have a sink on set yet. We're working on that. It's going to be for the next iteration of our webinar series. So I've just got some lukewarm water in here, and I had the neem. Where was the neem? Oh, sorry, I forgot to bring it out. Here's the neem. So this is neem, and it's a really cool like I said, it's a natural pest deterrent. But you can see, like I can actually turn that upside down, and it won't come out. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, oh shoot, you know what? I should have got a spoon or something. I'm gonna have to get a spoon and find a spoon. Oh, thanks. My producer Nat is such a big help. We'll get the neem here, and the sorry, I almost knocked that over. and I'm just going to scoop out. We need about a tablespoon of neem. So this is more like a teaspoon, and you can see how thick it is. It's also quite pungent. you know, I wouldn't say, as someone who works with food waste and worms and dirt, you know, smells aren't usually something that bothers me, but this has got quite a strong aroma. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get that neem in there. It's definitely a little bit messier than I had anticipated. Clearly did not do a run through of this part of the webinar. So Nat, let's make a point of practicing that next time. So what I am going to do, I've got the tablespoon of the neem in there. I've got the lukewarm water, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be really messy all over my hands, but I got to mix it up. I'm going to mix it up, and hopefully that neem is going to dissolve a little bit in there. You can see it's still pretty solid. There we go. It's getting more mixed up, and then I'm going to spray this all over the plant. Now, one thing to note is that if you are applying neem to your plant, it's ideal to be doing it in the evening. You don't want it to react during the day when the stomata of the plant are open. You in fact want to be doing this in the evening. So obviously we're not quite able to follow that protocol right now. What's interesting about neem, though, and as a preventative method, neem is an excellent tool to be using on a weekly or even a monthly basis. And it actually can be used as a leaf shine. So if you have a little bit of extra neem, you could even be gently shining your leaves, which makes them look really pretty. And it also will ensure some natural pest defense, and it'll help you keep a close eye on any plants that might have become infected. So this is one of those plant care activities that hardcore houseplant lovers will do on a regular basis. Not only does it give a nice shine to their leaves, but it does in fact ensure that you're paying close attention to those plant babies. All right, so the last step, of course, you know, we've put this plant through a bit of a ringer. We've snipped off a lot of the branches that were infected. Now we've really doused it in water. In fact, it's gotten a little bit waterlogged, so that was a mistake. We're going to have to make sure that it dries out, so this plant will not get watered this week. But what I do always like to ensure is I add a little bit of worm manure after I've treated for pests. And that's because we've stressed the plant out, and we've really sort of put it at risk of infection by trimming it, by adding these natural pest controls. It can, in fact, reduce the plant's natural pest ability. So by adding a little bit of worm manure, we're in fact just injecting that booster. We're giving it the microbe back that it needs, and it's going to quickly be able to repair any of that damage that we've done or that the pests themselves did, and start to come back to life as quickly as possible. So that is the solution for your mealy bugs. What you'll end up learning quite quickly is that a lot of these pests are treated in a very similar fashion. So this idea of pruning and then some kind of treatment, and then often you're rinsing the plant at the end. And again, neem or insecticidal soap is very often one of the tools that you're using. So next option for us is that we are going to be talking about our spider mites. So again, spider mites, a very common, here, I'm gonna just actually dump this out. So I'm gonna go over here and just get rid of this so that I have a little bit more space while I'm doing this. And then I gotta put this next, all right, get this out of the way. I don't know why I left that there. Okay. And also, so here we have our second plant that I noticed. Now, I'm a little bit embarrassed about this one. I gotta pull it over here. It's a bit of a biggie. Okay, yep, it's coming. It's coming. All right. Oh, yep. Okay. And here we go. Okay. So this is a birds of paradise. Again, a fairly common house plant. Okay, I'm gonna be totally frank with you guys here. A couple of months ago, I started to notice that this plant was not looking so hot. And as someone that prides themselves on making a regenerative soil booster, on regenerative soil products, you know, I'm always a little bit concerned when I start to see a plant suffering. But for whatever reason, I was too busy. I wasn't paying attention. I kind of ignored the symptoms. And so I want to tell you what I did wrong so that you guys don't make the same mistake. The first thing was that I was so excited. Anybody that has a birds of paradise knows that that when you start to see a new leaf coming out, it's like, you know, you're on like leaf watch 2026. You're going to be there taking a look, waiting for it to unfurl. You know, it's one of the most exciting parts of having this type of a plant. And so initially, it looked like I was going to have another big birds of paradise leaf here. And then it kind of just died. It just went brown and shriveled up here at the end. I don't know if you guys can see this. Maybe if I stand behind it, it'll be better. Nope. Wonder how I could show this to you. If my cardboard, can you see it there? It's a bit better. So you can see here that this kind of just shriveled up and died. And you know what? If I had been paying attention, it was around the holidays, I obviously had too much going on. Right away, that should have been my first clue that something was wrong with this plant, that this plant was trying to tell me, Jocelyn, hello, I'm in trouble, can you help me? But unfortunately, I didn't pay attention. And so what happened next was this leaf, which was a new leaf, and again, so excited to have a fresh new leaf. It unfurled, but it unfurled with these black markings. Again, I'm hoping you guys can see that. You know what? I'm going to bring it up to the front, to the camera, because I really want you guys to be able to see. And maybe my producer can tell me if she can see them. So see those black spots? That was what was the second clue that there was something wrong with this plant. And I really, at that point, was just being a bit of a negligent plant parent, to be totally frank, because what that is a classic, oh man, sorry, oh, I'm a bit all over the place here. Maybe you can tell why I'm a bit of a negligent plant parent. I don't know. Lately, I don't know, maybe I'm just losing my mind, but things go missing and they get moved, or I forget where I put them. I don't know what's going on. Too much going on, clearly. But the point is, I should have been listening to what the plant was trying to tell me. Finally, it was only a couple weeks ago, I was watering this plant and I noticed a fine dust or webbing. And I'll be totally clear with you guys, you know, I live in a natural house and there are some spiders. So sometimes we have spider webs, and I don't mind spiders. They're part of the ecosystem. So they never really bother me. I don't pay too much attention. I thought it was just a spider's web. And I just wiped it off, and yet when I came back the next week, that same webbing was there in the exact same place. And in this case, it was from the stalk to the leaf. So at that point, I was like, hold up, Jocelyn, something's going on here. Stop ignoring the symptoms. Stop ignoring what the plant's trying to tell you. And I started to look a little bit more closely. I could see a lot of dust, a lot of fine webbing, both on top of the leaf and under the leaf. There was some, like I said, the brown bits had started to come up. And then along with some very fine white bumps, almost as if, again, it kind of feels like dust. So it's really easy to convince yourself that nothing's a problem, it's just a dusty plant. But unfortunately, upon closer examination, consulting my books, turns out spider mites. That's right. Spider mites, this plant has spider mites, and I really probably should have figured that out a long time earlier when this initially started happening. But the good news is that, again, spider mites are totally common in terms of it being one of those houseplant pests that sooner or later everyone has to deal with. They are challenging to fully eradicate, but there are a few things that you're going to do in order to help with that. So, first thing, as I mentioned before, we want to really clean our snippers before we do anything that is going to spread these spider mites. And as I mentioned, and for anybody that just joined, we made a really good effort to only have certain plants here that would ensure that we're not spreading too many of these pests elsewhere. So the first step is that I'm going to, in fact, trim off a number of these leaves. So we've got one, and I'm trimming them as low as I can towards the base of the plant without trimming the entire. Now, this one is looking pretty rough itself, so I'm going to trim it as well. And it is a bit sad when you have to take these, because they take a long time, these leaves, to come up. And but what we want to avoid, and I think this one I can probably, oh, this one's even a little bit mushy. So that tells you, this one I can kind of, I don't want to rip it entirely, but it's going to rip. So I'm going to just pull that off. And so I'm going to leave these two. Separate leaves for now. And the next step, we go back to the neem. So in this case, I'm going to actually spray the plant. And I'm really going to make sure. Oh, and it's getting on my computer. Okay, so we'll spray it over there. So I'm going to get under the leaf and really ensure, and then I'm going to go all the way to the base. I'm really saturating this plant with the neem mixture that I already had made, and ensure, again, the nice thing about neem is that it's really not going to hurt your plant. There isn't too much that you can do to worry about it. So I've sprayed on the neem now, and the next step is that I want to really ensure, I'm going to leave this for about an hour. I'm going to leave the neem mixture on for about an hour. It's going to smother those spider mites that are remaining on the plant. And then after about an hour, I'm going to have to wash it off. And that's because at that point, we're washing off the dead mites. When I go to wash it off, I would, in this case, because it's such a big plant, I would be doing that in the shower. That's going to be the best place to do that. And I'm going to put some kind of plastic over the soil, the base of the soil, in such a way that when I'm finished washing it, rinsing off all those mites, I can carefully remove the plastic and not allow those mites to go into the soil. That's one of the challenges with spider mites, why they can be really, really challenging to get rid of, why you're going to likely need to do this treatment a couple of times, is that they can get back into the soil. That's where part of their life cycle takes place. So anything you can do to prevent that kind of reinfection. And I should have mentioned this, I sort of said it, but as soon as you do notice that any of your plants are showing signs of a pest, you do want to separate them from your other plants. And it's not always easy. You don't always have room. And certainly You don't always have the ability to treat them right away, but at least if you're able to quarantine them, move them to a separate part of your home, then they aren't going to necessarily infect the other plants. Spider mites are known in particular for being very fast moving and quickly able to go towards other plants. So again, another reason why you want to try to get rid of them as soon as possible. As I mentioned, always a good idea after you've treated your plant is to use the worm manure. It's kind of like a first aid for your plants after they've gone through the stress of dealing with pests, of then having to be treated for the pests. And it's going to boost the natural power that is in the soil, those microbes that might be missing, that can feed the plant and get it back on track as quickly as possible. All right, so I'm just going to move this back over here out of the way. And all right, so here we are. It's that time of the webinar where I want to offer you guys the opportunity to ask questions. So we're going to go to the chat live. If you guys have questions, now's the time. Throw them in there. I do also want to quickly mention, so we have a special discount code for those of you guys who joined in today. And the code is listening to plants, all one word. And that's going to get you 25% off at soilbooster.ca. So if you know that you've got some plants that have some pest problems that aren't looking so hot, this is a great opportunity. Take advantage of the savings, stock up on the worm manure. If you do need to repot any of your plants because we're getting into the spring season, it's also suitable. You'll get the savings on the potting soil, the raw and regenerative potting soil. All the products are available. And this is going to ensure that as we go, we're about to go into the best growing season of the year. The days are getting longer. In fact, you'll be able to move some of your plants outside if you have that option. And if you do have a pest, that is one of the best immediate actions you can take in the better weather, is to just get that plant outside. And then when you have some time in your schedule, you'll have the tools and resources you need to be able to treat any issues. All right, so let's go over and I'm going to check if we have any questions. All right, so first question is from Deborah, which is, how would you treat brown scale that is on a jade plant? Okay, great question. Thank you, Deborah. So scale is actually quite similar in a lot of ways to the mealy bugs that I showed you before. Of course, the color is different, but the mechanism of action in that it's a small shelled insect, and that you can visibly see these brown little characters on your plant. So what I would do is very similar to these other pest protocols. Any part of that jade plant that you are comfortable pruning, that's your first line of defense for sure. And I know jades are sort of heirloom plants. They take a long time to grow, so it can be really disappointing or frustrating to have to prune back that jade plant. But if you are able to do that in a way that preserves part of the plant but removes any of the most highly affected aspects, then you're going to be getting yourself off to a better start. The next step with scale is that you do want to use either the insecticidal soap or the neem mixture that I was mentioning before, and you're actually going to wipe off the scale insects as much as you can see them. So again, using paper towel with the neem mixture, you can wipe off the scale and get rid of that any of those little insects that you see. Now, I have to be clear, I don't actually know if the scale can live in the soil. So that would be one question. Nat, would you be able to quickly check that out for Deborah and I? Because when it comes down to pests, it is important to know if they have a life cycle, at least in part, in the soil. If they do, then that does suggest that you're going to want to repot that plant as part of your pest defense mechanism. It is going to remove any of the eggs that might be living in that area. So Nat is saying that, thank you, Nat. She's like our live chat GPT. So brown scale, from what I understand, is not using part of the soil as their life cycle. So it's less of a concern to repot that plant, and it's more about needing to remove the individual insects and apply a preventative mechanism. And again, like with most, unfortunately, of these pests, you're going to have to probably do it a couple of times. And again, that's because even though with scale or with mealy bugs, you can see the large adults quite clearly, often the juvenile insects are much smaller. They can hide in the crevices. It's really just not possible to get them all on the first go. With the scale, I would also recommend that if you're able to put the plant into the shower and wipe them off in that way, then that's going to be another effective way to help manage that particular pest. So good luck with your brown scale problem. I know it's not one that I would want to have myself. And with a jade plant especially, I'm sure it's one that you've been growing for years and years. So good luck, Deborah. I hope that's helpful. And so Nancy is asking, Anuraj is asking, what are companion plants I can plant to avoid those mites? That is a great question, Anuraj. I do not have an answer for you. I am curious, are you asking about the spider mites? Because that there are, of course, the different types of mites that can get infected. And so I would be curious if that's in particular what you're asking. I know it might be something. I think that is actually a great suggestion for a future webinar. Companion planting would be one thing to focus on. The other thing that I realized while I was doing this research, and I didn't have time to talk about it today, is the use of predatory insects. So for example, with something like the spider mites, you can actually use something like a ladybug. You can release ladybugs, so depends how you feel about adding more insects in your home, but some people love ladybugs. Or if this was an outdoor issue, of course, or in a greenhouse, another natural technique would be a beneficial insect. I highly recommend, I think maybe we'll do a future episode about beneficial insects and how they can be used in a houseplant setting. Highly recommend you check out Natural Insect Control. It's an Ontario company, NIC, and they are a company that sells these natural insects, these natural pest control mechanisms, and they have a great website where you can look up the particular pests that you have encountered or that you're struggling with, and they will make recommendations on the ideal beneficial insects to use in that scenario. What is the pest that leaves a sticky residue? So there are a few pests that leave a sticky residue. In fact, the mealy bug that I mentioned earlier is one of the ones that can leave a sticky residue. I know there are some other ones. Nat, would you mind quickly seeing if you can figure out which other pests leave a sticky residue? I think it is a good question. And I know that I'm missing at least a common one that often a lot of the crawling pests, they're leaving a trail of sort of solution or enzyme on the plant, and that's causing some of that stickiness. And so thank you, Nat. So aphids. So aphids are a flying insect. They kind of look like a fruit fly, but with a very long body. sort of like a mix between a fruit fly and a mosquito almost. And they can leave a sticky residue on your plant. Aphids are quite a common pest. Fortunately, they weren't ones that we had a problem with right now, but I think we'll add that to our list for future webinars in terms of doing a session around treating aphids in particular. Because they're a flying pest, they add another element. You need to be doing a capture mechanism in addition to a treatment mechanism. So you sort of have a multi-pronged approach to that kind of a pest. All right. Let's see what else we have. So Anne is saying that she has densely packed yellow bumps on one of her plants and leaves. And is there a sticky residue on the leaves? Anne, I'm curious if there's a sticky residue on the leaves, or if the yellow bumps are on the plant itself. So if you can just clarify that would be helpful. And what % of alcohol are you using? So in this case, I'm using a rubbing alcohol, and I don't actually know what percentage it is. I think a rubbing alcohol is usually a low percentage. Wait, I could be wrong here. What is it saying? Nope. So it's actually saying it's 95% ethanol. So that's actually quite a high percentage. And it might be the type of situation where you want to dilute it. So if you are using a plant that's more sensitive, then you'll want to dilute your rubbing alcohol. I know, for example, if your plant has tiny little hairs, like if it's kind of like a fuzzy plant, then they tend to dry out. They can be more sensitive. So you'd want to dilute your rubbing alcohol, and so you're not drying out that plant to the same extent. All right, what else? Okay, so we have, Rhonda's asking about aphids as well. Does sound like that needs to be a pest control webinar that we focus on in the future. Nina. Okay, I started a rose from cutting indoors. It has rooted and is growing, but something is eating its leaves. Do you have any idea what it might be? So definitely recommend for any of these pests that you're not familiar with, and I will say I do this myself. Take a photo and upload it and see if AI, so you could use ChatGPT or even just one of the Google features, and often it will be able to identify the concerns that you have, probably better than most people. The other option I'm going to say, in particular for Anne and the bumps, which are sticky themselves and leave a sticky residue after cleaning. And can I ask you to send me a photo? I would love to look this up, and it sounds like something that I should probably have an answer to. You're not going to be the first one or the last one to ask me this. I'm got a lot of shows coming up, and I always want to learn more and be able to help people. So if you don't mind, Anne, send me a photo of those yellow bumps. And I will see what I can do to diagnose the problem and also provide you some solutions. And it may also be something that we incorporate into a future pest control webinar, because sounds like we got lots of pest problems, lots of concerns about healthy plants. And so I love to hear that. I'd love to help where I can. This is just the beginning. So thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed treating some of my plants with you, introducing you to what I do here at the farm to help control things like mealy bugs and spider mites, sharing that these are a natural part of growing houseplants without chemicals, growing regeneratively. And I hope that you guys can join us next time as we do more of these regenerative growing webinars. Have a great afternoon, everyone.